Welcome to the Costa Property Podcast, the podcast that turns your dreams of owning a piece of paradise on the Costa del Sol into reality. I'm Warner Laurie, and I'm joined by my co-host and wives, Sandra Laurie.
Join us as we embark on navigating the ins and outs of real estate and relocation to this beautiful region.
We're not just about market trends, we're about sharing real-life experiences, because we know the struggle firsthand, and I've helped many people navigate this challenge also.
If you're dreaming of your perfect Costa del Sol home and want to get real, no-frills, expert advice, then you're absolutely in the right place. Join us each week as we share honest insights and information that will guide your journey. So good morning, Irina, and welcome back to the Costa Property Podcast. I'm thrilled to have you back with me this morning.
Good morning, Sandra. Thank you very much. I'm really excited to be back again as your recurring guest. Really appreciate you every time thinking of me.
And today we're going to be jumping into a topic that's really important. It's something that I get asked by every client that we work with, and it's the whole topic of NIE numbers, TIE numbers and Residency, a super important one for, I guess, anybody with long-term plans in Spain, right?
Absolutely. It comes across everywhere, this topic.
Amazing. So let's jump right to it. So the first question that I always get asked is, what is the difference between an NIE number, a TIE number and a Residencia? So what are they and why are they different?
Right. So before we start talking in more detail, it is important to mention and to distinguish that there are just two segments. Number one is the NIE. NIE is just a number. It is a sort of foreign ID number, which is issued to anyone who has any type of professional, economic, or social interest in Spain and want to engage in it. It does not distinguish between EU or non-EU citizen, but it distinguishes you as a foreigner in Spain because Spanish people have DNI. Now, it doesn't confirm your residency status, and the number itself stays with you forever. It only changes if you obtain Spanish nationality, in which case you swap the NIE for the DNI. This is number one. And then the second group is the residency permit. And the residency permit can be in the form of a EU residency certificate, which is issued for EU citizens and very often referred to as green NIE. And the other document is the TIE, which is issued for non-EU citizens and is literally translated foreign identity card. Now, the TIE is just the final document of a usually quite lengthy residency application process for the non-EU citizens. And it's the same, so it's just the final document confirming what type of residency permit a person has obtained. It can be non-lucrative residency, it can be digital nomad residency, student residency, or EU-dependent residency. All those different type residencies at the end get a TIE document. I know there is a lot of confusion around those terms because very often NIE is used also by Spanish people as the generic term related to foreigner ID document. For Spanish, if you're a foreigner, it means you have an NIE. So when they ask you for your ID document, they just say, give me your NIE, not clearly specifying whether it is just a number or it is a residency permit. And that's why I think the whole confusion comes around this term, that it's most used terms when we're speaking about ID document for foreigners.
And that probably explains why people are so obsessed with it then, because by the time that they interact with you or I, they've probably heard this term a few times, but not really sure in what context they need it for. So they're just hearing NIE, and they're going into this panic mode of, I need to get my NIE number and I need to get it now. Okay. That makes sense.
Absolutely.
So basically what I hear from you there, Irina, is it is a topic that people get overcomplicated. They're overcomplicating. It's not as difficult as we think. We need to be conscious of the two segments Okay. And basically, if you have an NIE number, it doesn't actually mean you're a resident. That's a misconception that people can have as well.
Absolutely, 100%.
So if somebody's moving to Spain and in the midst of relocating across, which one do they actually need? What do they need to start with, I guess?
So if you're moving to Spain with an intention to reside in Spain, meaning you're planning to be living in Spain or staying in Spain longer than 3 months, your obligation is to obtain a residency permit. EU citizens, it is a Central EU Registry Certificate. It's a very long name of the document, which is a small card size paper. It's a paper document which is of card size and has a green color. That's why it is very often referred to as green NIE. And for non-EU citizens, as we already discussed, it is the TIE card, which is just a reflection of their residency status, but the actual residency application is a much lengthier process, which involves several steps and a lot of time as well. Now, the NIE on its own is indeed a separate procedure, but it does not confirm your residency status. So in many cases, as you already mentioned, it is a completely unnecessary admin step, which is not required because NIE number is always issued along with the residency permit. However, for those who are not planning to reside in Spain, but have some sort of interest in Spain, for example, they want to buy property or buy a car, or open a bank account or receive an inheritance, those people, whether they are EU or non-EU nationals, they need to obtain the NIE number. Very often, as you already mentioned before, very often we see this obsession of people getting their NIE number as soon as they arrive to Spain. And although, as we already discussed, it may be absolutely unnecessary and just an extra administration step. So in each and every case, individual assessment is required. In some cases, indeed, it is advisable to get the NIE number before you apply for your residency. For example, if you are EU citizen and you come to Spain with an intention to find employment or self-employment, you need to get the NIE first because every employer is going to ask you for that. Or if you are a non-EU citizen planning to apply for your digital nomad residency and submit the application yourself, you need to get the NIE in order to get the digital certificate to submit the application. If you use a professional, then this step is absolutely not necessary. For the retired people who come with their non-lucrative visa, for non-EU retired people, the NIE number is issued at the moment of them getting the visa stamped in their passport. So again, they don't need to apply for NIE beforehand. And then when they come and arrive to Spain, they can obtain their TIE. Then this NIE number is just transferred to the TIE. In all occasions, if the person has received NIE before getting the residency status, this NIE number stays the same and going later onto the residency card.
Okay, lots of information there, and I think lots of things to consider, but really what I'm hearing from you, it's very important that an individual really evaluates their own plan when it comes to Spain to really assess what they need in order to move forward, because there's different requirements depending on your different circumstances. But I guess when it comes to the most common type of people that I am interacting with on a daily basis, where they're buying a second property in Spain or they have a long-term plan to relocate to Spain, they require an NIE number, right? That's important for them and their situation. Let's talk a little bit about how they apply and what to expect, because this is also an area that I see people get quite confused. Some people feel that they should apply in their consulates in their home countries, and then some people would rather wait until they put their feet on the ground here in Spain. So maybe let's jump into that part and help people to understand that piece a little bit more.
Of course. So it's important to remember again that each of these documents requires an own appointment and an own procedure, own requirements, and an own set of documents. So firstly, the NIE number can be applied both in Spain and in the Spanish consulate in your current country of residency. Applying in Spain usually is much faster because the NIE number is very often issued either at the place or is just in the matter of days. While in the consulate, it normally takes several weeks' time. The NIE number can be applied for either in person or through an authorized representative, which is especially convenient for people like you mentioned before, those who buy a property. They can leave a power of attorney to their solicitor, and then the solicitor applies on their behalf here in Spain, so they are not even involved. Now, the EU residency certificate or Green NIE, which is a residency document, and therefore it is only applied for in Spain and in person. It's not possible to apply through representation. And of course, you need to apply for it then when you arrive here with an intention to reside. It doesn't make sense to apply for it if you're not planning to reside in Spain. And the same with the TIE, as it is also a residency type document. It is applied for in Spain and only in person, because for this type of document, a fingerprinting is involved, so no representation is possible. Again, important to remember that TIE is just the final step of the lengthy residency process, which involves a lot of steps beforehand. So one would need to start the process much more in advance before you can even come to the TIE. Each of these procedures and each of these documents requires a set of requirements. So all set of documents, it requires an appointment. In some cases, appointments are very difficult to get. It can take several weeks to even secure one appointment. One needs to fill in forms, to pay police fee in advance, and of course to make sure that the set of documents you present meets exactly the requirements for your individual situation, which is why the advanced preparation is always advisable, like we already talked in one of our previous chats.
Yeah, amazing. And I think as well for people that might be listening at home and they're thinking, gosh, this sounds really complicated, and they're maybe still a little bit confused about NIE and TIE. As Irina says, the TIE is the last step in a long residency process. And this is really for people that are based outside of the EU that have a longer term intention of living in Spain. So even if you're, planning on buying a second home and just spending part of your free time in Spain in line with the requirements, that may not necessarily be something that you need to worry about at this point, because TIE may not necessarily be the route for you. But I think, as Irina correctly says, if you are a non-EU citizen and your intention is to reside in Spain, then you need to investigate if that route is for you. And what I'm hearing from Irina with all of these things, preparation sooner than later, because we spoke about this actually in detail in one of our last chats about people coming over, not really understanding this side of the process, coming to Spain and finding that they don't qualify. So I guess you want to ensure that you're not in that boat, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Amazing. So if somebody is
Well, if it's a situation where you just want to have it as a second property, you absolutely do not have any intention to reside in Spain, at least not at the moment, then the only document which is relevant for you is the NIE number certificate, which you will need to be able to complete on your property purchase. And this document you can obtain at any time of the process. As we said, NIE doesn't confirm any residency status, so it is not affecting your tax residency situation or migration status in any way. But it will be absolute necessity to have it in place at the moment when you have found your property and would like to complete on it. Without it, it will be impossible. And if you're sure that this is something you're going to do, then applying for NIE rather sooner than later is definitely good enough. Because as we said before, sometimes appointments are difficult to get. So imagine you are in the situation that you have found a perfect property. There are several people bidding for it, and you're the one who was the only person who has the NIE and can complete quickly.
Exactly. And people, often write to us and ask this question: when should they start applying for this? And can they apply themselves? Like, you can, but I always say don't, because you don't know the system here. You likely don't speak the language. If you do, fantastic. But I always encourage people to use a professional service like yourself, Irina, as a relocation specialist, or if they're in the process where they've appointed a lawyer and you grant your lawyer power of attorney, because I just think that you want to make this process as easy as possible for yourself. So my advice is always use a professional before this. What would you say to that?
Well, that's also definitely my advice. And the process itself is not really complicated. But what I wanted to talk also about is what I see happening with people because they don't have enough knowledge of the process or confusing even the terms. For example, as we already said, NIE is the most commonly used term when we talk about the foreign ID document. And it's not just foreigners to blame, it's also Spanish people. So it is very often confused between the NIE, just a number, or NIE, or let's say a residency document which contains the NIE. So what I see on a daily basis in the foreigners office or foreigners department office of the police, where these procedures are taking place, I see lots and lots of people are just being sent away because they booked the wrong appointment. They booked the appointment to get the NIE number, and in reality, they wanted a residency, or vice versa. They brought a completely wrong set of documents, again, preparing for the NIE, but they needed a residency, and just people sent away. They lost time, they lost money, they super frustrated. Same people contact me first time and say, I want an NIE number, help me to get an NIE number. And then after verifying the situation, we establish that it's not actually even the NIE number that they need to. So again, if they would have tried to do it themselves, they would have gone through a wrong process and ended up doing it again twice. Yeah. All of this leads to lots of confusion on the social media. People are asking for advice using the wrong terms. They are getting the wrong advice. And then all of that leads to further frustration and confusion. And then at the end, Spanish red tape is blamed for everything. So using a professional there would help you to avoid these mistakes. And at the end, on very many occasions, will save you time and money.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I think, why would you put that extra pressure on yourself going to these appointments where you're not familiar with the process, the terminology? You may not have the language or the level that you need to navigate through this situation. I just think you're going to put yourself in an unnecessary scenario. So, and you're absolutely right. Then we see situations where Spanish bureaucracy and red tape is blamed for this, but really it's because entering into the situation, you haven't understood how the landscape is going to work. And why should you? It's not your home country, right? I think that when people are preparing for this part of their process, they absolutely should work with a professional. I think that going at this alone is just really not necessary. You're going to start your experience in Spain potentially on the back foot because you're going to get stressed out. So always, I think, hire a professional like Irina that can support you with this type of process to avoid unnecessary stress. That would always be my advice when it comes to questions around applying for the NIE number. Amazing. Irina, like you do this day in, day out. You help hundreds of people navigate the different types of documentation that they need to stay in Spain and reside in Spain. From your professional point of view, is there anything else that you think people should think about or be aware of as they're starting to prepare to get their paperwork in order?
Right. Well, yeah, as we already discussed, the common misconception about confusing the terms, which would, if you use a professional, you would save yourself time and cost. Another misconception I see, people believe that the appointments are very easy to get. So again, they come to Spain and think, okay, we'll sort it out, everything in Spain, and we don't need to prepare in advance. This is not always the case. Sometimes appointments really take several weeks to secure. So one need to keep it in mind when preparing. So again, preparing in advance, reserving enough time, and using a professional. So just to summarize quickly what we have discussed before, number one, NIE is just a number. It is issued to both EU and non-EU citizens. It doesn't confirm your residency status, but it stays with you forever and then later goes on to your residency card, which for EU citizens is called Green NIE or EU certificate, and for non-EU, TIE. Number two, don't fall into the so-called NIE trap. When all the documents are called NIE, make sure to clarify for yourself which exact document is applicable for you, which set of requirements and documents is required. And then once all of that is clear, make sure to, number three, make sure to reserve enough time and start advanced preparation in order to save yourself time and cost.
Great advice. So I think if you're listening at home and you have your eyes on Spain this year, be it you want to buy a bolt hole in the sun, that's what you're thinking of. You want to start your Spanish journey by first buying a holiday home in the sun. Listen to Irina's advice there. You're going to need an NIE number for that. Don't wait till the last minute. It can take some time to get the appointment. And as I'm going to repeat again, hire a professional to help you with it. Make your NIE appointment details through the professional and you will save yourself a lot of headache, because then essentially you're ready, you have your number and you're in a position to start to accelerate your property search.
Correct, yes.
Amazing. So Irina, that was like a really effective, productive tour through NIE numbers, TIE numbers, the differences, the confusions, some of the misconceptions and the mistakes that you see people make. So I think that was so helpful for anybody that's sitting at home listening, and these are the things that they already need to start thinking about now. As always, Irina, how can our listeners reach you? If they want to talk to you further about using your services, how can they get in touch?
I can be reached through my website, www.malagaexpat.com. There is also a lot of information on my website, also around the topics of NIE, TIE, certificate residency, the difference between NIE and residency, and so on. Anybody can contact me through there by sending an inquiry, or through my social media, so links like Instagram, it's malaga.expat, or my Facebook, Malaga Expat as well, or LinkedIn.
Amazing. We will put all of Irina's details in the show notes of this episode. But if you're not following her on Instagram, please do. You'll see so many success stories about how she's been able to help people, potentially like you, make their Spanish dream a reality. So do give her a follow and you'll find all of her details here in the show notes of the episode. We hope that you've enjoyed. Thank you for stopping by, and ciao for now. Thank you so much for listening into today's episode on the Costa Property Podcast. Another fantastic episode learning about the highs and lows of relocating to the Costa del Sol from real people who have been through the journey themselves, and of course our wonderful experts. If you have been enjoying the show so far, remember to hit subscribe to the podcast and leave a rating or review.
We absolutely love hearing your thoughts. Please send any questions that you would like us to answer on the show to warner@wlcostaproperties.net. Or you can pop us a message on our socials, which are in the show notes. Remember, you can also visit the website, www.wlcostaproperties.net.
See you on the next episode, and bye for now.
Bye-bye.